You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
Michael Lazaro from Evolutionary Energy Arts. Thanks for being on Radiant Creators today. It's exciting to have you on. You are a creator of a lot of content.
Thank you. In other words, I can't keep my mouth shut, right?
It's a good thing, though, because you create a lot of good stuff when you don't keep your mouth shut. So I'm glad you're always going on about stuff. It's very nice when your favorite content creators are creating, you know. And so you have Evolutionary Energy Arts, that is your YouTube. And of course, you have your website too, evolutionaryenergyarts.com. And by the way, everybody, this is Radiant Creators, radiantcreators.com, also on alternatecurrentradio.com. And the live stream's not working, so nobody heard that live, but they'll hear the recording later. So Thanks for having a bio. I wanted to mention that. You have a bio, and that is so incredibly helpful. And I wanted to say that people who take themselves seriously have bios. So everybody out there, have a bio. Do it now. So from your bio, a line that I really enjoy that says a lot is: a lifelong searcher of hidden truth. He first read the Bible cover to cover by himself at 11 years old, and he studied has studied the Nag Hammadi and Dead Sea Scrolls. So ever since a young age, you've been hanging out with a lot of books. How did that start? That's a unique path, and it started young. So how's it been hanging out with books all your life, ever since a young age?
Real good. I'm a bookworm, most definitely. But more than that, I too have gone and experienced things. So besides the books, I've taken part in all sorts of different religious ceremonies. I've joined all sorts of different, philosophical belief systems, and not really saying that I per se got joined any one particular one, but just experimented and experienced everything. And it's been a lifelong pursuit. It started when I was 5 years old because my brother died when I was 5. And I just had this need to know exactly what happened to him now. Where did he go? And it just stuck with me. And I remember handing the Bible and a Catholic missal, because I was brought up Catholic, to a neighbor who was 8 and could read, and having her read to me, because I just had to know, where did he go? I don't understand where my brother went. And it just stuck with me ever since then. And then when I was 7 years old, we moved into this house that was kind of creepy and spooky, and there was nothing in this house besides down the basement one single book, and that book was called Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. And I feel like it was left for me, and it's so unusual to have a book like that, something so esoteric, talking about Hermeticism, Eastern yoga, and the Western mystery. I looked at it, I made the best I could out of it, but it piqued my curiosity, and I kept going back to it as I got older, till, I was able to fully read it and start to really understand it.
And there's no way that was by accident. Sometimes just having one choice is a wonderful thing, because that's all you can do. Especially in our, ADHD world, to have only one choice would be kind of a blessing. So you found this book, and that was your one thing to read. And how old were you at that time?
I was 7.
I can imagine. I remember when I was about the same age, I found a book on Enochian magic, and there I was in my room drawing these little patterns and trying to work out all the symbology and such like that. And I don't honestly, to this day, remember where it came from. I just had it. And my parents would look at me and my relatives while I was drawing these odd geometric shapes and pictures, trying to work them out. How's this supposed to go east, west, and there's this? And they just thought, this one didn't come out right. So one choice is great.
It was just something that was always in me. And, when I look back, I realized it was always there. And I think it's past life related, because I do believe in past lives. And, just as a little kid, I used to go meditate in my closet, 7, 8 years old. And it just came natural to me, and that fascination with everything that was hidden and mysterious. I just had to know everything. So knowledge to know how the universe works, to know how this all really comes together and what its purpose is.
Electronics, something you've mentioned on your YouTube. Electronics are acting a little strange, and it seems like sometimes it can be the placebo effect. You hear that and you just think, oh, they're acting strange. But this is an example. My recorder, one of them isn't working, but the one that my better one is, so we're good. That call dropped. I start wondering, how long is everything going to keep functioning? Because electronics seem to be they're starting to have behavioral issues. Have you noticed?
Oh, big time. Most definitely. There was a time frame where I was getting censored by YouTube tremendously. And it would go in 3 predictable patterns. The first thing they would do is just basically demonetize everything. And most of your views come in the first 24 hours. So, usually 24, 36 hours later, they would say, oh, your video's okay. Meanwhile, you didn't make any revenue on it. And then they would go to a different stage with it, where they'd start to actually say not suitable, and keep it not suitable. And really, if you said anything negative about the system in it, you couldn't mention chemtrails, you can't mention vaccines, you can't do all these trigger words. Automatically, that's not going to get monetized. And then the third thing was they would allow it to go through, but they would basically they have ways of giving you technical problems. And I was doing live shows, and all of a sudden I would see my settings turn off, and it'd be like, what? What just happened? Or just like switching, like the program. So all of a sudden I was in an echo chamber, and then I'd go and check out my settings, and it was like switched. So I literally was in an echo chamber. And it just got worse and worse with the technical difficulties, to where I couldn't use my OBS Studios, which is the software I was using on my my laptop. My desktop. So I started to do them on my laptop, trying to fix the OBS issues. I downloaded it. I took it off, and reinstalled it. It would never work. And then the laptop started having the same issues as well. It's just kind of bizarre, but they would go through these different stages. Very predictable. And now, all of a sudden, they're leaving me alone. And I think they're leaving other people alone, which actually makes me nervous, because it almost makes me wonder, okay, is something really close now, to happening? Because they don't seem to be, the views are probably not what they really are, but they play with that all the time. But, yeah, tons of technical issues from their end, but then also just technical issues in and of itself that may be related to the fact that the magnetosphere is declining. Maybe it's related to the sun, cosmic rays. Maybe it's new technology they're using and trying out as well. There's definitely things going on, and I really don't think we have too much time before we get that grid going down that they've talked about and warned us about.
And that's something you talk about on your channel quite a lot. And you're not a doomsayer at all. And this is an interesting situation, I find, that we don't want to have this sort of pseudo white bubble around us and just say only positive vibes in, only positive vibes out. I find that actually eventually that addiction to positivity gives people health problems. It actually tends to age. I actually find that intensely positive people, now not just somebody who's happy and positive, but somebody who's doing, let's say like the Abraham material, Abraham Hicks, just be positive, see the positive side of things. They sort of become kind of vain. They're not really attached. They sort of lose their human empathy. And it's funny, I find that they age faster and have more health problems than people who are genuinely negative. because it's still burning yourself out with an unbalanced polarity. And so how do you feel about in these times that we're in right now? Let me look at my little questions I got here. So people are getting crazy, and everyone's noticed that. But within all this craziness, how are you finding, while you're looking at the news and while you're sharing what's going on in a positive way, how are you staying at peace in the midst of hell, at peace in the craziness, and also sharing with people, hey, look at all this negative stuff that's going on. It's important for us to be at peace. We are responsible for our own, I guess you could say, cosmic responsibility, because we are little scalar antennas. We are scalar transceivers. We're receiving and transmitting a reality. So I'll stop talking for a second and let you ponder some of all that banter I just went on about.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. There has to be some balance, and I think that's maybe one of the things that has slowed the channel's growth a teeny bit, because I think if I was one way or another way and definitively took a stance, whether I became like a total naysayer, doom and gloom, this is like biblical, there's nothing we could do, it's all God's will, then you would have a lot more subscribers and a lot more views. And then, the same thing going the opposite way. And I think we have to have both views. We have to look at everything, and recognize that, we are truly in a war of consciousness right now. And it is a war. Everything is full of the darkness and the light. It's just, I love Taoism. I've studied that for many, many years. And read it, Tao Te Ching so many times, and it's true that that's our reality in this dimension. It's not all white, light and white, and it's not all darkness either. It's a mixture thereof. But I do think that as a whole, we're moving towards a better place. I think the system has to come down, and we recognize the system has to be dismantled and destroyed, because the system's how we're locked into this constant fighting amongst ourselves, and having all the things that are stressed in our society, that consumerism, and having that stressed to such a degree, it's all about ego. And I've talked so many times about pride too, and just, how it's drummed into our minds that, American pride, for instance, you're doing something right if you go and join up and serve your country in the military. But these are corporate wars. All you're doing is you're serving the bankers and serving the military-industrial complex. But yet people think that's quote-unquote Christian when it's totally antichrist when you get down to it. But calling out the belief system that has been so indoctrinated into us in so many ways is a hard thing for a lot of people to handle. But I feel like it's a big part of my purpose. It's to stir the pot, but do it in a gentle way, as gentle as you could, and realize that ultimately this is a war, but it doesn't mean we have to be at war with ourselves. We need to transform the planet in a different way, because look at what warfare has gotten us. One war after another, we're still in the same place. We haven't gotten anywhere. It's a karmic loop that we will never escape from unless we actually change the way we think and realize how much we're being manipulated. And did I go off track?
Not at all, not at all. Well, I like something that you're saying about the old world has to fall away, and we don't have to be at war with ourselves. So there is a war of consciousness going on, but I think our role as people who are, let's just say people who are awake. I like that word. It works. It's hopefully it doesn't sound too presumptuous. But for people who are striving to focus on that self-awareness, you really need that peace in the midst of hell. You really do, because there is a war of consciousness going on, and it's getting more and more extreme. We can see the polarization within people. We can see the extremes in the weather. Whether it's cosmic rays or just time to wake up, whatever's happening, people are getting crazier. And along with getting just outright more unhinged, I'm seeing that people are moving into tribes more than I've ever seen before of like-minded individuals, whether that's a positive, life-enhancing thing or not. People are sort of getting into this tribal mentality. There is us, and then there's the others. There's no more cohesiveness any longer, And so, no, you didn't get off track. I mean, and hopefully I didn't either. But it does seem that there are shatterings, that there's, waking ups that happen to people. And for me, like when I was a youngster, I was in the military, and I think that was a huge shattering, a huge wake up for me, because, you're young, you're 17. You shouldn't be able to sign contracts when you're 17. You have no worldliness. You have no idea. You think, I'm going to go be a soldier. I don't endorse such things at all. Do not do that. But it was a huge shattering that you realize a lot of what you're saying. You think, oh, I'm going to go do something good. And it's like, no, you may be noble, but those that you are fighting for, and maybe fighting in the first place, is not noble. Don't serve. It's very unfortunate to see how evil loves to use goodness, against itself. And that's definitely something we're seeing in the world today. A tremendous amount of manipulation out there.
I love that. What you just said, that's exactly what it does. Because there's, amazing, beautiful people in all traditions. There are people that are so devout, whether they're, Islamic, whether they're Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, Christian, there's people with the purest hearts, and you see saints in all of these religions. And then there's people that are saintly that have no religion as well. And yet we still have this divisiveness going on, and that's completely planned, and it's completely utilized to keep us, basically it's the Tower of Babel, because they don't want us unified, because then they're going to have to eliminate that. But what's happening with the energies coming in is many of us are waking up to our abilities. Many people are discovering perhaps they have more intuition than they thought, more psychic ability. All of a sudden they're able to feel energy. They're getting buzzes and tinglings and, wondering what's going on. They're finding out that they're having premonitions. They're, just knowing that their friend is in trouble, and they text and, well, yeah, I just got in a car accident. That type of thing is happening all the time now, where before maybe it was once in a blue moon. Now it's happening all the time. We're getting so connected. And so that's part of their problem. And the controller's problem is that they're not going to be able to keep the truth secret anymore. But to get back to what you were asking before, how do I stay sane? It's really my daily practice, which is at least an hour and sometimes 2 a day of meditation, qigong, and also getting physical exercise too. You have to have all of it going. And I do a lot of Vedic mantras as well as Kundalini yoga mantras. I found that mantras are very powerful because the vibrations, they're the things that free stagnant energy, and they've been totally transformative to me. Just like today, for instance, I woke up feeling a little bit off, and just did qigong and did my mantras, and it's like I'm on top of the world. It's just totally changed my energy, and it was just wonderful.
Oh, I love that. It'd be great if you did a qigong video. Just do your routine and share that, because we would hang out and do qigong with you in the mornings. We'd be, ooh. It'd be great.
Actually, I do have 2 of them. I have 2 of them up. If you go under playlists and look up qigong, Qigong, and meditation, there's probably 6 to 10 meditations, and there's 2 qigong programs. One's 20 minutes, the other one's an hour.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah, well, definitely. I'll put that in the show notes, and we'll be doing that this evening probably, or tomorrow morning. Because, qigong, when you do qigong, and I'm, very new to it, but something I noticed, when you actually do the practice, when you do the movements, it changes the energy, not only in yourself, but the whole house is different that day. Have you noticed that? Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I would have classes. When I was up in Ohio, I wasn't doing the YouTube channels. That's going back about 3 years ago or so. And I was just basically teaching qigong, teaching Reiki, pranic healing, energy work in general, and then working on people with energy, as well as some massage. And at that time, we would have classes on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And Saturday, you might have 20 or 25 people in the room. And I got a little bit jam-packed, but boy, the energy would just be, you would be like so high for the rest of the day. Sometimes people would just sit down and chill for a while because they didn't feel like they were safe to drive. They were buzzing so much from head to toe. Yeah, but in a good way.
I love that. Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. We'll definitely link that in the show notes. Do Qigong along with Michael of Evolutionary Arts. It's essential. So I wanted to actually I'm going to paraphrase. I didn't actually write the quote down exactly as you stated it. But in a recent video, you mentioned, the video is called The Great Famine, Dams Being Pushed to Brink, SF Blackout Warning, Atlantic Tropical Depression. So that's the title. We'll link it. But something that you said, I'll paraphrase it here. I think it's a big deal, and it's something that I think we've already started talking about, but I really want to make sure we elaborate on some. It kind of goes like this. Energies come in and change us. Our intuitive abilities are growing. If we take time to decalcify the pineal gland, our energy will rise past the control structures. We will be able to read people like an open book. We will see their real intentions. And something about that really resonated with me, because I believe that as we can say it's cosmic rays hitting us. Who knows what it is? I tend to think that's part of it, but still, their intuition is waking up. People are waking up. That like neighbor who always seemed extremely mundane. You notice that they're painting their house with EMF resistant paint, and you're like, what? So people surprise you. There is a waking up of intuition. Now, I like to call it our natural human instincts. We're extremely intuitive. And one of the things that gets me, and I wonder your take on it, is if our natural human instincts are awakening, and if your natural human instincts, your intuition is alive, and you're cultivating it, and you're aware of it, just like a muscle, it gets stronger. I mean, at that point, when that critical mass happens, I'll call it the empire, can't get away with its crap anymore. Because to me, every human, like when you see a politician say something, I'm like, why aren't we having this great big collective barf together? Because anybody who, don't you see, and I feel like I'm this canary in a coal mine. I'm like, don't you see like the etheric horns and like don't you see, just see the evil resonance and just like the spite and the hate in their eyes? And anyway, not to be so theatrical, but how do you feel about that? People's natural human instincts are awakening, and that's going to change things.
Most definitely. And I don't even think you were overly being dramatic, because it's pretty much like that with some of them. You could just see right through them. And, there's still a lot of people that love Trump, but it's just so easy to see who he is and his ego-based identity. There's not the big heart there. There's not. It's all about the military-industrial complex, and he's just another actor, because they are such actors. But I don't know how people could buy into it. I just can't buy into either side. So when I, just look at the Democrats and the Republicans' constant bickering, I see them all in diapers. And, it's just so obviously childish. It's not even kindergarten. It's so low energy, low vibe. And it's just it's like watching the WWE, WWF. And it's like, come on, guys, come on. This isn't real. You got to know that, but some people they still can't see past it because they have those blinders on, and they're doing things that are counterproductive to their pineal gland. So obviously fluoridated water is a big one. The fast foods. I mean, and this is something else I need to touch on with a lot of people now, because more people are experiencing it. And as we go through this process, you really got to detoxify. You have to detoxify yourself physically, the physical body, every way you could, emotionally and spiritually too. Because as you go through the layers, you'll find that you won't be able to experience a lot of the old and not feel that revulsion, like we all have to take a huge barf. You're going to actually get physically sick from the lower energies, from the toxic foods. Once you cleanse yourself, if you went and say, ate a Big Mac again, you'll be sick for days. You just won't be able to do it. And it could be even so slight, like I made veggie fajitas, And I used a hot sauce that when I looked afterwards, I realized, oh, it's got MSG in it. I was wondering, why did I get this allergic reaction? It could be that much, just a tiny bit of hot sauce with MSG could trigger you. All these things that are constantly in our foods, like the dyes, the GMOs, we've been bombarded with so much. And there's no way I could live back in even Sarasota, where I was living before, which I loved so much, just because of the energy. There's just too many 5G towers, too much electrical going on. We're going to be getting exposed to too much EMF. If you get out in the woods like I am now, and now I don't even feel like this is far enough out for me, away from everything. It's the same thing as eating toxic food. One of my clients, that's also somebody I've been training, that's turning into a wonderful energy worker. She went and had like pizza and chips with her kids, and she got sick for 3 days because she wasn't eating that way anymore, and because also she's getting more sensitive to the energies. So we're going to be forced to give up a lot of negative habits as we make this, trip, down this road.
And ultimately, it just, these negative habits are all great to drop away, and it just seems that as the intensity increases, our sensitivity increases. As the intensity increases, our sensitivity increases. And no, if you go to a city and you walk around, it's one of the things that I notice is you can feel, well, the energy is not so great, but also just health. I mean, health of people. I'm, in Scottsdale, which is not really a big city, but if you go to the supermarket, you go walk around, whatever you're doing, and you're aware and you witness, you look at humanity and you think, wow, people on average are really, really, really unwell, unhealthy, sick, hunched over. I'm not going to give people who use their cell phones a hard time, but, you do see that I wonder how long it's going to be before people just start using the video camera on their phone and just looking at their phone, so rather than see with their eyes out here, just have the camera go on the video camera and just look at their phone and walk around and look through that, because it's very strange. So you see this, dreadfully, intellectually, spiritually, physically unwell culture, humanity, and then you also see the with a cell phone, if you have one, if you're carrying it around and using it, it is ultimately an aspect of transhumanism. So, to experience life, it does seem like people are getting a call to get a little bit rural, and it varies per person, or even if you live, in the jungle of humanity, of a city of whatever size. Getting out in nature becomes more and more important. People want to find at least those green spaces and go walk around and notice the seasons change and such. So I do see the energy that's coming in, the cosmic rays, I'll call them, as definitely moving people around. Have you noticed more of a movement of people who go, oh my gosh, I just can't live in the energy anymore in my city. I need to spend more time in nature, or I just need to go, live at the end of a forestry road. I need to go buy property and get out of here. Yeah,
no, I totally do. And even myself, I've had visions myself of living in the Southwest, and I specifically saw the Four Corners area, although now with the changes going on, it's getting pretty cold up in Colorado. I've never really considered Colorado. I knew I would never feel right there. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But here, I ended up coming here from Florida mostly as on a compromise, and because it was easy and quick. And I knew the hurricanes are going to get more intense. There's going to be more issues with tsunamis, meteor tsunamis, the wind-driven tsunamis that we've seen now. And then with the red tide, the red tide was the straw that broke the camel's back. And, I just decided it was time to go. I felt like I was being guided out of Florida. So I came to the Appalachians, and it was really more of a compromise. And now getting ready for another move. So I'm going to head to the Southwest, heading your way. But I'm not sure exactly where, but I know I want to be as remote as possible. So it'll be in really one of the more remote areas of Arizona or New Mexico. That's what I'm looking at now. And ultimately, possibly out of the country to somewhere in South America eventually. I've kind of seen that too. I get these like visions and they'll keep coming back. But I feel like my next step is to the southwest, and we'll experience some of the desert.
And where are you right now? You're in which state?
Right now I'm in North Carolina.
Okay, North Carolina. Yeah, moving to Arizona will be a dreadful change as far as far as environments. It's pretty much I just call it Mars with cactus. That's pretty much what it is now. That's just the high desert where we're at, and it's very, very intense. You go up north a little ways, and it's much nicer. You get some pines, and it's more of a four seasons kind of place. But yeah, feeling those earth changes, feeling how whereas green is becoming brown, whereas brown is becoming green again. And just went to LeakCon 2019 in Denver and drove from Scottsdale, Arizona, which is pretty much Phoenix, all the way to Denver. It's about 12, 14 hours depending on how things were going. And it was shocking because here on Mars with cactus, we don't really notice much because it's just really friggin' hot and it rains sometimes. So what's going on, you don't really know. But it has seemed to be a little bit cooler. But driving back from Denver, got almost blown off the road by, there was it looked like hurricanes coming. There were some big supercells and it was getting windy and raining. And I've never actually had to slow down because I literally thought that I thought the hood was going to rip off the car. We were getting some serious winds out there on the highway. So I had to slow down because it was blowing the car around so much. And then got hail on the way home. And then also got snowed on in Arizona of all places. I think only about 6,000 feet or so. So kind of the mountain pass we would come through. But still, that's a little bit uncharacteristic. I mean, it was actually snowing in the road, and the roads were icy in Arizona up the in part of it. So definitely changes are happening. So it's funny, where do you go when everything is changing? I guess just if we think about, let's say, a grand solar minimum, if it's getting cold again, if winter is coming, like they say on Game of Thrones, well, then ultimately we can look at and there are maps of where it was cold and warm before. So you kind of can look at history and see maybe where it's going to work now. Because I can say definitely New Mexico and Arizona from this recent trip they were way greener than I ever remember seeing them this time of year driving across. So it's like the desert really is for real. It's snowing in the desert and it's green.
It's going to bloom. It is going to bloom and it's going to change. That's why, honestly, my focus has been on basically southeastern Arizona and basically southwestern New Mexico. I've been looking for the more remote areas and areas really where you have some hills. You want some rolling hills, honestly, like I've touched on before, there's reasons why the ancients went into the caves and dwelled in cliffs and things like that, because the winds are going to get intense. I want to be able to build earthbag homes. And, part of the plan is that, right now there's probably like 12 to 20 people that I've gotten to know real well that I think will end up coming, and we're going to start forming a community because I think we're going to need communities. And like you were talking about tribes, yeah, we are kind of gathering into tribes, and some of them are going to actually be coming from Europe and joining as well. And it's not something I'm going to publicize purposely a lot, because you have to really vet and get to know people, because you could definitely have some conflicts going on if you really don't know somebody well who you're going to bring in. But I'd like to find land that would be suitable and to grow with, and then get like-minded people together with different skills and different skill set. Because if the grid goes down, you're going to need somebody that has a green thumb. You're going to need somebody that knows what to do in case of a medical emergency. You're going to need an electrician, a plumber, whatever it is. You're going to need a community to really be able to survive and thrive, and then to move forward too. So you also have to have that spiritual mindset.
And it feels like that tribe that comes together is one that you can trust, because I call it a tribe, also can call it a fellowship, but it does seem, and I've noticed that people do have sort of international fellowships or international tribes. Not everybody's in the same state, not everybody's in the same country, but it does seem that somehow or the other there's an agreed upon spot and everybody just starts to migrate there. I guess it really is following the light, following the excitement, just following your intuition. You could even say, like Joseph Campbell, following your bliss. But yeah, there's a certain vetting of people that your intuition naturally takes care of when you have that common purpose and you have that common intuitional understanding that things are changing, that something's happening. So I guess it's ultimately just a matter of trust in that fellowship, trust in that tribe, trust in that common purpose.
Exactly, and just keep looking at how things are changing. Like right now, Texas is getting slammed, Oklahoma. Everything is changing, and where there was abundant water, like one of the thoughts with here was, well, there's a lot of water. Where I am here, I'm west of Asheville, and there's more rain here on an annual basis than Seattle, Washington, which I didn't know about. I knew it was wet here. I knew it's basically a rainforest, but if it keeps going and getting more and more, it's going to be an issue. And so the desert's looking better, and it's when you look at the way the patterns are, because I'm looking at like what the patterns have been the last couple of years, it makes me feel like that area is going to actually get to be lusher and lusher and more livable, probably a little bit cooler, so maybe your Phoenix temps will come down to a more manageable level a little bit. I think it's going to be the case. But at the same time, I love the remoteness of Montana and Wyoming, but it's going to be just unlivably cold up there. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but it's going to be, just like David at Adapt 2030 has always said too. Our growing zones are moving tremendously, and we're going to lose our bread baskets. But at the same time, we'll have new bread baskets that will develop that might be very surprising.
Yeah, and it seems that some people get it and then some people don't. I mean, I know it's almost an impossible question, but what do you think that difference is? I mean, there seems to be whatever number of people who are tuned into this and they know something's going on and they're building new tribes, communities. We'll learn EMT stuff. You learn this. Oh, you love herbology. Oh, you love growing stuff. And it's not a struggle. It's just natural. You're not like forcing it. You don't have to have all these like project planners and worrying about accountability and timelines. No, it just flows natural like water in a stream. It does. Let's all just congregate. The tribe wants to be here. This is happening, and it's happening a lot, I notice. But it's only a small aspect of humanity that is doing that, I think. Like, what makes that group different? What do they get? What are they tuned into that other people are not? Because there's many people, even if they get a glimmer of the truth, you might say, let's say that, man-made climate change should be questioned. You're not bad because you're a human and you fart and you eat and all this stuff. Like, gosh, I just feel like it's such a small percent that are becoming tribal and living a good life, a healthier life. What makes some people unique in that way?
I think a lot of the people that are doing that are the people that have been gravitating towards taking care of themselves, honestly. There was a thought that came through my mind, where you go into Walmart, and a lot of this is economic, social economic, and there's a certain vibe that you have in Walmart. You go into Whole Foods, it's a little different vibe, and some of the other places like that. Honestly, if you could afford to get yourself off of the junk, it's going to start to help clear out your body. And part of it's just the body is bogged down. People that are consuming all these fast foods, just drinking sodas, things like that, they don't realize the damage they're doing to their bodies, and it's also inhibiting their abilities, and part of it's basically decalcifying your pineal gland, getting off fluoridated water, detoxifying the body, because if your body is a mess, it's going to, basically cause a foggy brain. It's just that simple, and you're not going to be able to receive the signals. Now, part of it also is your conditioning, because a lot of people are really conditioned. You have a lot of people that are fundamentalists, whether they're fundamentalists of whatever religion, and they're fundamentalists to the core where they will just ignore or block out anything else. So they're purposely shutting down their antenna, and they're not going to receive messages. They'll ignore messages even that perhaps they're getting, that maybe, it's time to clean this up. It's time to move somewhere else. It's time to make a new friend. Stop hanging with these people. There's going to be people you just can't tolerate anymore. You're not going to be able to be around because they're going to be of a lower vibration. And they're going to have that, maybe they still have all that negativity, that is that negativity that just emanates and saturates the whole room. And you just can't be around them anymore because they pull you down. As you know, it's one thing to be overly optimistic and another to be a little bit pessimistic. But when there's those that are so negative that being around them can actually cause you to start dropping, start getting irritable, start getting angry, start getting depressed. You got to separate yourself from them. And that's a painful process too, because a lot of people are in unequal relationships. We are one of the other things is, how many relationships are ending so quickly now and people are moving on? Because I think we're growing so much more. And there's only, we're going to find that a lot of times a relationship will only take us so far. And then we're going to have to go on to a different one or be alone for a time in order to move to another level, because people are moving at different speeds.
They definitely are. And that's the thing with a little bit of wisdom. I guess there's some wisdom that only comes with age. And if one is after that getting in wisdom, one thing I think that they do realize is that relationships are beautiful. Let's just say, romantic love relationships, let's put it that way, like specifically where you may or may not have children. In those relationships, they only go so far. I think we are rethinking what relationships are. I think many of us are programmed to want to be with someone for life, and I think that's natural for many people. It works, that's the ideal, but it doesn't always work out that way. And in that new type of relationship where you have two sovereign beings that are okay and happy by themselves get together and they see what happens, and then there's no training manual. There's no old thing you can learn from your grandparents how to make this work. It's unique. When you have two expansive, self-aware beings get together, wow, it's amazing. But also with relationships ending so much, you see the growth and the tumultuous oh gosh, I screwed that word up. The tumultuous growth that you see from people who are done. They should not be together any longer, and they still are. And I think so many great people out there, I want to tell them, don't make your partner wrong. Neither one of you has to be wrong. Just realize it has been time to go your separate ways, and just love each other and let it go. You could be great friends the rest of your life. Stop trying. The relationship as it was is now done. So anyway, there's so much going on along those lines. Also, when you mentioned detox regimen for your body and eating healthy, that looks different for almost every person, But I think what's important is that whether a person's vegan, whether they're paleo, whether they're an all meat person, whether they're raw food vegan, whatever it might be, listen to your body, find something that works for you. And as far as your detox regimen, whatever it is, just a diet of food and also a regimen of detoxification and exercise that you kind of develop yourself from what's out there and works for you. As long as you can do it and it's consistent, that's going to be it. You will never stop growing from that point. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and I think even with that, it's not going to serve us to be dogmatic, honestly. While I personally think that it's in our best interest as a whole to not really eat animals, because I think there's a karmic loop. At the same time, there's going to be times when your body is going to be screaming for nutrients, and it can be a lot more difficult if you're trying to be strictly vegan to get some of them. Not impossible, you could do it, but it's going to be the case where you might be better served to. Although for the whole, I think the planet's moving more towards that. I think we're moving to the point where we learn how to live on light. If you ever read that book, Living on Light. And it goes back into the yogic tradition, because there's so many yogis that have not eaten anything, for years, decades. Now that sounds impossible to the Western mind, but it's not really. And I've shared on my videos, one of my good friends, he's against my wishes and telling him you should at least drink something. I mean, he's gone a week without even drinking water, taking in absolutely nothing. And you should be dead after 7 days without water, but he does it regularly and he's fine. So I think a lot of the things that we were taught are, again, self-limiting, and they're not really indicative of our real reality, because from Qigong, I could tell you that we could draw energy and life force just from the air, and just with our intent, with our breathing. And it actually does nourish us. And we, ultimately, everything that we're taking in is going to be sunlight. Ultimately, we're just eating the plants that took in the sunlight, so it's all energy. And I think that that's the way we're going to grow and expand out to. But the changes are tremendous. And again, I don't think we should be so dogmatic, because everybody's in a different place. Although I do find that as people get to higher levels, they tend to start to eat meat less and less, as they get more spiritually inclined, because they'll start to feel, they'll get so sensitive, they'll feel the energy of the animals, So again, it was different when the Native Americans, for instance, were out there hunting, saying a prayer, giving thanks for the animal. And that's the same thing in the Vedic system as well. If you truly are saying a blessing for the spirit of the animal and thanking it for its sacrifice, it's so different than cows that are being shot in the head with a shotgun, or slaughtered in so many different ways, and chickens being, living in 1-by-1 boxes their entire lives, pumped with steroids, antibiotics, and hormones, night and day. So what you're taking in there is pure toxicity and terror. And you'll feel it as you get more sensitive. It'll come over into you. So maybe if you are eating something that's free range and was grown, in a really organic setting, you might not notice the negative vibes as much as if you went and, got it off the supermarket shelf and it was a creature that was treated horribly.
And diet definitely is something unique to the individual, I think, and it changes. Like you were saying, as you go along, it changes, and I think most people who are, let's say, on the path in life, chasing wisdom, they've probably gone through many unique styles of diet, and it just seems like it's easy not to be a fundamentalist along those lines, because it's always changing. I've been everything from a raw food vegan to just a vegetarian to eating a lot of meat to this to that. It changes over time. Not being dogmatic, I think, is very, very healthy along those lines. And when it comes to eating meat, something I'm noticing with people is this real awareness and this insistence on the animals not suffering that they're eating. I'm seeing how it really matters to people that if they're eating beef, if they're eating cows, that was a pasture-raised cow that just lived its life wandering around, eating, having a good life. And then people get very conscious of, well, I don't want that cow to have been put in a truck and scared and taken to a slaughterhouse. I want, Judgment Day just to have happened to it in the field and this and that. And so people are willing to pay more for meat and eat less of it. And it seems that it's very important to them that, that chicken was, beyond free range, was just pastured and ran around and laid eggs wherever it wanted and such like that. So it seems that I'm really seeing a lot of consciousness about the welfare, the happiness of animals, and a realization that if that animal is not living a natural, happy life, if it was, born and raised in a box on antibiotics and steroids, that it's not just that people are concerned about their body and their health, but people, I really feel, are beginning to connect to, I think maybe as a mass consciousness, I think is starting to happen, connect to all that suffering of animals in the world for our food. It's almost like people are waking up to it and going, wait a second, I can feel this great pain.
I agree. I mean, I think that's part of the big mass conscious awakening. I think a a lot of us have become kind of flexitarians in that we just simply listen to the intuition and go with the intuition. And, me personally, I've mostly been vegetarian, like the last 20 years, but there's been times when I went totally paleo. And then recently, a couple of times I have eaten some meat. And what I've found is, while I feel like there's some benefit to it, it's like as far as feeling stronger or what have you, I feel that my body is just losing its ability to process it. And I just really, it's kind of like the body's at a different stage now. So even if I'm craving it in some way, shape, or form, I have to look at other alternatives because I just can't seem to process it anymore. And that could be maybe stomach acid related changes there, as opposed to in the past from having such long stretches of eating just vegetarian. And one year I ate mostly fruitarian. And of course that includes things like tomatoes and avocados, things along those lines. And honestly, that felt so high vibrational. It really did feel really good. My endurance was amazing then. I felt light as can be, although maybe not as physically strong in the gym, like working out, but it did feel great spiritually. It really did.
Yeah, I did a high fruit diet for a while, and I actually I fasted on fruit for 33 days once, nothing but oranges, apples, bananas, and other stuff. And at one point my body finally said, okay, that's enough. Get back to eating more. But that was an incredible experience too. And it also, I lost crap tons of weight and felt amazing. But the body only wanted to do it so long, and then it was like, all right, done. Eat other things now. Or incorporate other things. But it's amazing. There really could be something that's called intuitive eating. Ultimately, like, how about that for like the new diet book we see on the New York Times bestseller list? Intuitive eating. And listen to your body and what does it want? It's because one thing, it's the body's going to want, I think, food that matches its vibration to some extent. So if you're really, really low energy and not well, then you're going to be like, McDonald's, I want some of that, But if you're really vibing high, then your body's going to naturally want microgreens. And if you're eating meat, pastured happy meat, and it's going to want avocados and crunchy salads and just high vibe goji berry stuff.
Yeah. Totally. I think we're also going through periods of purification and detoxing, and then it's like the need to that we're going to need certain nutrients at different times because the thought is that there's actually all new organ systems develop.
Our food needs change. They're not consistent. It's not always strawberries. It's going to be strawberries and dates and maybe pemmican. You don't know. It varies, and you listen to it. And you mentioned how, because there is a notion of the human body changing and also different organ systems. So keep going with that.
Yeah, it's interesting that so much of this stuff that I read way back in the 80s has been so accurate. If you've read like any of Barbara Marciniak's work, like the Pleiadian books, and just so many, Barbara Handclough, there's just so many authors from back in the 80s and 90s that were doing channeled works and talking about going into the photon belt, talking about all this energy that's going to blast us. It's going to change our system. We're going into crystalline DNA, and how there's going to be new organ systems developing. And honestly, it's been so incredibly accurate beyond anything that you find in, like, say, biblical scripture, or even Nostradamus, which for the most part can be taken many different ways. And, this is really clear. And even warning us of the dangers of what's coming in 5G, with weather control, with HARP, with CERN, all these things on down the line with the GMO foods and how they're going to try to shut everything down. They were in such detail way back in like 88 to 92 that it's amazing now. Because at first I read them skeptically and thought, well, this is entertaining anyway. But something told me to, hang on to those books, and keep looking. And so I did. And part of it was talking about our whole body structures changing. Like we're going to be developing new organs on top of our kidneys, around where the adrenals are, in order to help filter out things to a much purer level. Because we're going to have to be at a much purer level. Period. We're going to have to be detoxing from the toxicity that so much of it's really man-made. When you get down to it, it's just all the poisons that they're putting on us purposely. And I have so many clients and subscribers that are reaching out to me and telling me that they can't eat for long periods of time, can't touch anything. Then all of a sudden they're ravenous. And I think really what we're going through are cycles of purification, detox, getting rid of. It's like a sine wave. And then all of a sudden rebuilding with the new, back to detoxing at an all new level, going deeper, getting rid of the old energies, and then again, rebuilding the new. And so, like, personally now, I just went through a long period of not really wanting to eat much. And then now I've gone to being like famished all the time, so it's weird, how it changes so much. But in the past, I used to, for the longest time, I was eating just one meal a day and doing fine. And now I'm finding all of a sudden that I'm always kind of hungry. And, it's a different stage. But I've noticed that with other people as well.
Yeah, I tend to think of it as, well, we are multidimensional beings. And I always look at it like, you never know what you're doing on a different timeline, like what all the versions of you were doing. And I feel there's a continuity, there's a connection. And so maybe it's not this version of you that's hungry, it's a different one. And so you're feeding that one. I think especially with moods, with energy. And this just leads on to something that somebody wanted me to ask, and it's managing fear in this crazy-ass vice grip world was the question. That's from Aaron, actually, the other Radiant creator. Managing fear in this crazy-ass vice grip world. And so, it really does seem that we need to be responsible for our energy. And we recently termed it, cosmic responsibility. Your cosmic responsibility, because you are a creator. And so your energy, your state of being does create, does matter, does affect. And so you're kind of responsible for your vibes. But we're living in a fear vice grip world right now. And how are you working on keeping the positive vibes going right now? I mean, I think we touched on that in the beginning of the show, but maybe we'll slow down a little bit and let's talk about that, because I'll throw in one more thing. When it comes to staying positive in this world right now, you do have the cosmic rays. You've got intense, human evolutionary energy, you could say, coming in, which is like a workout some days, just sitting on your ass and you're exhausted. I think it's because you're working out on a non-physical level, quite literally. And also, didn't they just call it the Messerschmitt? Because I can't pronounce it. It's like the Wehrmacht, or it's not the Wehrmacht. It's the Wehrmacht. It's a German word for world pain, and it says that there is this pain. Like Eckhart Tolle speaks about the pain body, but that pain, the world's pain, is not necessarily your pain, But you are also stuck with the reality of you have to help transmute that pain, like whatever your personal version of the world pain is. So anyway, that's a lot of rambling, but that's what happens here on the show sometimes. So yeah, in this fear vice grip world, you're radiant, you're staying positive, and what is we already touched on it earlier. Let's just briefly again, what is your positivity workout?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much in the morning, I do about 20 minutes usually of Qigong. In the past, it used to be like an hour, but I have a lot more than I'm doing now. So I usually do about 20, 25 minutes of Qigong. And I do the 8 pieces of brocade, which if you're familiar with it, that's all about opening up the 12 primary meridians. So that way energy flows perfect and free. And then I'll do also some standing meditation, like Zhan Zhuang. So actually it is probably still 30, 40 minutes, which there's different positions for gathering energy. And it's amazing what that will do for you, because it'll just root you to the earth and you'll feel more stable. You'll feel emotionally stable and kind of like, you could automatically vent straight down into the earth as you root into the earth. And then I'll do my mantras and then still meditation. And the mantras, they just lift you up. They are so uplifting. And they're formulated that way. Like I shared the one before that just is a blessing. It's out of, Kundalini Yoga. And you'll find a lot of really good mantras come out of the Kundalini Yoga tradition as well as the Vedic tradition. But those mantras are formulated, they're thousands of years old. And you can't go through 108 repetitions of a mantra and still be in a bad mood. And I'll usually do 5 to 10 mantras in a day of 108 repetitions. So, that's a lot of vibration. And that vibration just clears out the negativity. And honestly, it inspires me. Because when I get with them, all of a sudden, it's just like, it's like I'm on a mission. It's like I'm a clear channel now of my higher self, of the best intentions. And then that's when things just roll right through me. And I can't be anything but, in a good place, because of them. So I found that they're really invaluable.
And do you have any of those mantras on your YouTube?
I've mentioned some of them.
Okay.
The Gayatri mantra is a beautiful one. So a lot of the people that I listened to musically would be like Deva Premal. Are you familiar with her?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Deva Premal, Snedham Kaur, Ajit Kaur, Krishna Das. There's so many of them out there. I really found such family and kinship down in Sarasota going to kirtans. Have you ever gone to a kirtan?
Oh, I have. Yeah. With Krishna Das, actually. So
awesome.
Yeah. And along with Krishna, I've always liked Krishna Das. And one person, if you ever heard of this guy, MC Yogi. Oh my heavens! Yeah, I mean that's if you need some Vedic mantra hip hop, boom, there you go.
But it's like the energy is just beautiful and it's incredible, and there's no way it's not positive. I mean, you just have to experience it. So when people say, "Well, you're just invoking demons," it's like they really don't have a clue, because demons don't give off that type of pure love and acceptance of one another. And that's really where we need to go to. It's just the opposite. And so, I mean, I enjoyed that. Sometimes I'd be at 3 kirtans on the weekend, and, it had so many drum circles and kirtans down there. I love that part of it. But, also I put around with the guitar myself, and, we have drums and stuff. So get our own little circle going in here as well, and just let the energy flow in a positive sense.
I like that. And when it comes to playing guitar or any musical instrument that a person might have interest in, whether it's a drum, it could be a djembe, a harmonica, a xylophone, whatever moves you, it does seem that there is a real measurement you can do with music. And I think some people will get hung up on they have to be an accomplished musician, a good musician, etc. And I would really encourage people just to toss that out. If you like playing guitar, look on YouTube, 15-minute guitar workout. Oh, and just learn something. Do anything that seems like music to you. Just make sound, because it's not that exciting playing things that have already been done. I mean, some of that's fun, but learn some, I don't even want to say music theory because that sounds too technical, but just you find a way to make noise on an instrument that you can do consistently that can be a measurement of where you're at, and ultimately a mantra in itself to raise your vibe.
I agree. Yeah, music is transformative and expressive, and so what we immerse ourselves with, we take in and we become. So if you're and just basically allowing yourself to be bathed in things that are positive and beautiful and uplifting, it's going to do that to you. It's going to help you in this process. And take Krishna Das, who is he's touched so many hearts. If you listen to his voice, you might not think he sounds like a typical musician, but boy, has he touched hearts. So it's a beautiful thing. And that's why I loved at the kirtans, because it would be like no judgment, no matter what you sound like, just let your heart sing.
Oh yeah, and the setting is great too. When I used to live in Denver, actually, I used to go to the ISKCON, International Society of Krishna Consciousness temple, and they would have kirtan in there, and it smelled like incense and all the great art, and it was amazing. And I love that concept, or that idea of summoning demons. And I think to myself, like, if I wanted to summon demons, there's music for that, right? I wouldn't, this is, it's just very funny. They'll say, oh, you're summoning demons. And it's like, no, if I wanted to summon demons, I would listen to demon summoning music and I would chant along with that. This is not that. Oh my gosh. And that's the human intuition thing. A person should be able to feel, this is love, this is high vibe, this is beautiful. And it's just so funny. Very, very disconnected to think that, whatever. Yeah. So
that's part of the mission, is to wake up enough people, because if we get enough people awake, enough people changing, the whole world's going to change that much faster.
Oh, they definitely are. Well, you mentioned cleansing the pineal gland, and do you have anything specific that you do, along with what you've already mentioned, to keep your pineal gland happy, healthy, and wise, and shining and glimmering, like radiating cosmic light?
Well, obviously, non-fluoridated water. The water here is actually from a well that's nice and deep, and it's like the cleanest water I've ever had. But besides that, too, I mean, people don't even think about it, too. Like when we are on city water, you might have a filter on your faucet or whatever it is you're drinking from, but you might not have it coming from the shower, so you're bathing in it as well. But honestly, the single thing that has done the most for decalcifying the pineal gland has been the mantras, and vibrating them, resonating them, so that you feel the intonation, because that really just, it opens it wide up. And then honestly, too, the other thing was doing so much energy work, because when I was in Ohio, I had such a busy practice. An average day was 6 to 8 90-minute sessions, doing energy work a day. And then I'd also be teaching on Wednesday nights and Saturday. So, usually I would take a few clients on Saturdays. So I was doing energy work for 50 hours, 60 hours a week, and so it was like doing meditation for that much time. And that's when I felt it all change. And it comes in waves. There's a period of time when you feel uncomfortable, and you might actually even think you have a tumor, because there's pressure up here. There's just pressure that builds, and it'll give you a headache for a while until it passes. But that's part of the pineal gland waking up. Mantras, and one of the things that I haven't mentioned in a video that I've been dying to is, you remember in the Bible where it says, don't pray like the heathens with vain repetitions. I feel like what they were doing was saying, don't do repetitions of mantras, because your pineal gland might open up, and then you might get the bigger picture. And when you start looking at what's really going on, I've only really just started to touch on it in some of the videos. We're giving away our power. We're giving away our power, and that's what we've done forever. And it's time for us to reclaim our power. And there are people out there that are saying and recommending that you do such things as, saying, I will not consent, to beings of any sort taking my power. If I've made any sort of bonds with you and you're, using me in that way, then I break these bonds. I forget, there was this one gentleman I was watching, and he was really fascinating, because I do think he's gifted in seeing into the other side. And he was talking about that and how we've been tricked into, basically giving them all of our power. And I don't know how you feel about that, or if you understand where I'm coming from.
Oh, I do, definitely. And I think, like I say, that's a new term I've come up with, is cosmic responsibility, taking on your role in the universe, your role, because It's funny, a lot of the ways we're feeling, a lot of our emotions, a lot of our desires, they're not our own.
Right.
And that's the thing. So since you're a transceiver, since you receive and you transmit, ultimately when you transmit, you create. I mean, if you are receiving something that is not yours, if you're vibrating a certain resonance that is not you, then you're also transmitting it, and so you're creating it. And so that's the thing. That's what I'll call it like the empire that comes from Neil Kramer. He coined that term empire, which is ultimately, let's just throw it all in one bag. You could say, like, from government to Illuminati to deep state, whatever you want to call it, to etheric entities, all of that. You can just call it empire. That's the things that empire does. As it goes, well, we are going to we're going to use humanity as our magic wand, its energy, and we're going to create what we want with it. We're going to use their power, because ultimately we don't really have that much power, but they do. We can wield them like a magic wand, and we can create wars, famine, enslavement, stupidity, hatred, envy, greed, all these wonderful things that they love so much. We are their magic wand. We're their scalar antenna to create in this reality exactly like the hell that they want. So yeah, I think it's very important to, at a certain point, take that cosmic responsibility and start to take your life back and own your own center, your own energy, and hang out there and know what's going on and create from there.
Yeah, exactly. And this is truly, I do believe it's like you've touched on, multidimensional. I think the whole battle is multidimensional, and that's something that could be kind of scary when you really think about it. Like, if we think, okay, well, when we die, then everything's bliss. But what if the battle continues? And it's continuing on the other side there, and that one other dimension one off from us. And nothing's really changed, What if you've still given away your power on that side? And just think about some of the prayers that we've been taught too. And this is stuff that's been coming through to me clearer and clearer now. I have to, share that, I was, it really hit me. I was brought up a Catholic, and, somebody that I was close to was passing on, and the last rites were being given, and I feel like I've always been intuitive, and honestly, it felt evil to me. It just felt downright evil to me when the last rites were being done. I could feel the person's soul, and it felt like the person's soul was coming out of the body and then was being grabbed and sent right back into a situation it didn't want to go into. And it always stuck with me then. It felt like, oh, this feels really wrong. Yeah, I just didn't like it. And it really hit me to the core. And especially since I was being brought up a Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel that. That is very, very true. I get that. And that is a great reality, a great realization of reality, that when the body no longer functions, the light leaves it, then yeah, it would suck if it just doesn't, and nothing changes. It's just I get it. It's like one of those things where I can feel what you're saying, but I don't know how to articulate it, but I get it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, oof, that's a good one.
Well, I mean, there are those thoughts. Some people believe that we're in this karmic trap, and if you really look at what Buddha was talking about, we're on the wheel. We can't escape the wheel, but we are on the wheel. And so, a lot of the light stuff, like you were talking about before, it's all good. There's really nothing but love on the other side. And actually, I have friends. I have 3 friends that all have been clinically dead for various periods of time, substantial, 10 to 30 minutes. And all of them experienced nothing but love, like a loving embrace, but told that they had to come back, because there was still work to do. So I do think that there is that, but I think that there's some people that are here to raise the consciousness of the planet, and then there's other people that are just kind of here, almost as if, you don't want to say it, but almost as if they're just sheep, and they're not able to wake up fully. They're just totally unaware of who and what they really are at the core. Because ultimately, we do have a lot of power. There's a lot of power. And like I told you about the situation with the book when I was 7 years old, well, that was the first year that something came to me as a kid, and it was small and it was real, and it came to me twice, and it now, from doing research, to me it looks like what would be called an ebens, not like a typical gray alien, a little bit more humanoid looking, but about that size, about 3 feet tall. It didn't really feel too nice to me. It wasn't, horribly mean or anything, but it seemed to take pleasure in my fear. But then I started to have dreams about not being afraid and shielding myself and things like that I think were coming from a higher place, whether we call it guides, angels, or your higher self. But, it's not just me. I've had these circumstances my life, and my kids have experienced it too. And then my dad never told me outright, but he gave me clues that he had experienced these things too. He went through Catholic school all the way through and was an altar boy and everything, but he still knew that there were aliens. He knew that there were UFOs, and he just would leave it at that, So I know he had experiences too, and I know they follow certain families and bloodlines. And so, that's something I've had direct experience with, and know it's really there. And yet it is an interdimensional thing, because I don't know if you've caught any of the videos where I've talked about it, but just December 2017, I woke up and felt pressure in my lower dantian, which is like a storage point for energy. And then when I opened my eyes, there was like an 8 to 9 foot tall alien, very, very thin and gangly there, looking down at me, and it looked surprised that I woke up, and it like looked away from me. It broke contact, looked away, and was trying to shift its consciousness. And I was watching it, and it seemed like it was 2-3 minutes before it was totally out of sight. It just kind of was like a beam me up Scotty thing, where it started to just fade away. And then in the morning, my ex said, there was a tiny spot of blood on the back of your pillow, where your head was. And it's like, really? Well, let me tell you about what I experienced last night. So, did you ever hear me talk about that one before?
I didn't hear about that one. No, that's intense. Yeah, I think those experiences, it's when you have them, then it becomes real to you, and to get that across to people who haven't experienced such things. It's probably impossible. I think a person has to experience it, and then they know it's real, you might say. Right. When you have experiences like that, I've had, far out experiences that are not exactly like that, but definitely where you see things and you experience things physically that really are impossible in this reality. So you realize that there is more to this reality. It is multidimensional. And then you've had the experience, and you have to realize either, I'm crazy or it's real. And it's one of the nice things about, meditating, about taking that cosmic responsibility, about, centering, about, being sane. I actually think that, measuring our own sanity is very important. Some people are very flaky and they can't function. They think that makes them enlightened. No, you're a screw up. You're not. You're not enlightened. Impeccability is important, and our excellence is important. And so, when we have experiences like that, if we've been, practicing excellence, mental sharpness, physical sharpness, and I think it's very important to always check in on sanity. Like, it seems that everybody knows what sanity is. Everybody knows what kind of normal is, whether it's mundane or not. Like, we know what a sane reaction is, and we know what living a sane life in the consensus reality is. And it seems that when we have experiences like that, it really makes us check in on our body, mind, and spirit. Because did you find that maybe you doubted yourself? Did you kind of have to go through a process of realizing that was a true thing that happened? Or did you just instantly go, yes, this was real?
Yeah, I knew it was real because I was wide awake and just watching it for a while. But I had other experiences too, of a more positive nature. It was interesting because this being struck me as being like a clinician. It felt like it was just a nurse on call coming to check vital stats or something like that. It felt very, very unattached. There was no emotions coming off of it, positive or negative. Totally, totally neutral and just simply doing a job, whatever that job is. And I do feel it's about monitoring because I do think they watch us, and the watchers watch us. We get the watchers from the Bible, and it's not just in the Bible; it's in all the traditions. This is definitely, in some ways, we could look at it that we're living in a zoo, and in some ways, and there's a lot of different experiments going on here as well. And I do think that's the case, most definitely. But the reality is that at our core, we have part of source in us. So we have like so much power in us that most of us don't realize. Because I have seen entities that are most definitely dark and negative. And I was part of a paranormal group for a while. And, basically I would go in and cleanse and banish stuff, after the investigation. But I took part in the investigations too. But I found I was really good because of my practice that I've always done at clearing houses and, help move along things that weren't, wanted mm-hmm. and that were stuck. And I've seen some things that could only be described as like black holes with red glowing eyes. And mm-hmm. The same thing on more than one occasion. And they flee. I mean, they look nasty. They give off a horrible energy, a horrible vibe. It's like they feed on pure fear. But they just take right off when you tell them to, if you do it with authority.
And it seems that kind of entity also will bond itself, kind of become one with an individual's etheric body, as I've always seen, like a person's energy body, because it seems that helpful energetic beings seem to follow fellowships of people, also families, etc. But also so do rather demonic ones. I mean, have you come across people who, it sounds very traditionally biblical when we say possessed, but I do definitely, at least myself, I see many people, and they're usually rather angry, they're not particularly happy people, who are definitely possessed. I mean, within their energy body, there are those beings that are working through them. It seems that for some reason their energy was very resonant with being possessed. So they enjoy it almost. Like they go, I like these energetic dark beings that work through me. It's a really symbiotic relationship.
It can be. It most can be. And it's not just biblical. I mean, in medical Qigong and the Taoist traditions, that's a real common thing. And that's a huge part of the practice, is getting rid of these things because they are real. And there's many different types of them, many, many, many different types. Some are, leftover bits of humans. So in Taoist philosophy and medical Qigong, a human is actually a Yuan Shen, which is like a eternal soul aspect, along with 3 Hun, which are like, you could think of them as, and they reside in the liver, guardian angels, really benevolent beings that are there. You could think of them as guardian angels, spirit guides. We typically get 3 of them. And then there's 7 Po spirits, and the Po are earthly spirits, and they're there for the ego, and they kind of correspond to the 7 deadly sins when you think about it. And so we're basically a balance of all those things. So sometimes you might be, just doing everything in love and light, and it's really the Hun, influencing you, the 3 good guardian angels and guardian spirits. Or sometimes, it's the Po spirits, the more earthly, lusting, power-hungry, ego-driven side of us. When we die, in this philosophy, the Po spirits, the Po energy goes back into the earth and is absorbed back into the earth. The Hun either follow you on another incarnation, or they become the guides for somebody else. And your Yuan Shen, your eternal soul, makes a decision whether to come back again or in a different world even. It could be in a different world, as is the case with the Buddhist tradition and a lot of Hinduism. So we don't just incarnate here on Earth. But it's interesting that a lot of the ghosts and a lot of the dark entities that we end up encountering are leftover Po that won't go back into the earth. They resist going back into the earth, and they might appear as even an image, like a ghost of that person, but they're not really that person. They're just kind of an energetic shell that's left. But sometimes they learn that they could keep themselves around longer by feeding off of the living and feeding off of the negative emotions and stuff. So they'll attach to the living, feed off the negative emotions, and then that way keep themselves going with life force.
Wow, that sounds reasonable to me. I like it. Yeah. Wow. Well, I don't want to keep you forever. You've been very gracious with your time today. And what you're talking about reminds me of something that I just started reading by Rudolf Steiner, The Secret Brotherhoods and the Mystery of the Double, which gets into all our different energy pieces. And I've only just started reading it, but it's an interesting synchronicity of what you're saying, because it's definitely something that I've been pondering a lot recently. And I guess as we get ready to go, one more thing I wanted to ask you about was a recent YouTube. It was the one about NOAA, NOAA National Weather Service radar down, military plane crash. And that was crazy. I mean, you definitely pretty much said it all in the video, and I'll link to that YouTube. But NOAA, some of the systems being down, that really resonated with me when I saw that video, and it's so great. And people should listen to Evolutionary Energy Arts on YouTube, because he's always putting out amazing content. And it is the news you should be watching, not CNN, not blah blah blah. All the enlightened people I know, they just watch YouTubes for the evening news. They have their lineup, they wait all day for this great stuff, and you should, and Evolutionary Energy Arts should be on your list. Well, is there anything else? I mean, can you tell people who are listening to this, like, NOAA, pieces of it were down? It just doesn't seem possible. And it just struck me energetically. I went, there is something going on.
Yeah, it hit me on several levels. I mean, a lot of local weather services were working, but, it's either something they don't want you to see. Maybe there was some sort of signature that would let you know that the weather's being completely manufactured. And I think it mostly is. That's why I was jumping on the Grand Solar Minimum bandwagon a lot before. And then I started to think about the fact that the cooling that we've seen has coincided with tons of chemtrails, chemtrailing going through the roof. So then you got to really doubt that. Then I had some encounters with some people that are in that, they're in that circle, and realized, at least with one person, that they do work for the government, and then it made me realize, oh, maybe this is part of the agenda. And so I took a step back, and I still think, yeah, of course, there's periods of time when the sun goes through changes. But I think a lot of it's being controlled, and I think almost all of it, if not all of it, can be controlled. But I do think part of this, I think that we're getting freed is really what's happening now. And so the energy coming from the central sun is coming through our sun, because our sun's a relay, and every planet, every star is a being. I do believe that they're beings. So I think the ancients were right in thinking that, they were in effect kind of gods, which, in the Hindu tradition, we look at them as devas. Doesn't mean they're source, no more than you or I. They're just something else that has consciousness and is alive on a different dimension. So every one of these beings is alive. And I think what we have now is basically the opportunity coming in from source or some higher being that to free ourselves from this, and to go to a new level that is going to bring us out of the influence of the controllers, of those that are in charge. The empire, we're getting freed from the empire is the big story. And so when I see things like NOAA go down and some of these other things, and if we saw like a lot of military planes going down spontaneously or malfunctions with a lot of military equipment, then I'm going to wonder if some of the good guys are interfering and trying to disrupt some of their plans, because we've been taught to fear everybody that's not the official channel, but we definitely have allies out there. There's definitely other beings out there that are watching everything happening, and they're trying to help us. But we have to basically accept the help, and recognize our own spark of divinity inside each of us, and become full co-creators.
Absolutely. Well, I like the way you have mentioned in your videos that things are sales pitches, and I really hope that people can cultivate that. I know I work on it myself. Another term that Neil Kramer mentioned is the neutral file. You can take data and you can put it in a file, and it's just your neutral file. You don't have to be attached to it emotionally. You just collect data and you put it in your neutral file, and over time, if it is true, it becomes truth and you know it. And if it's not, it naturally composts. And just goes away, and you don't have to do anything other than just allow that data to exist within you, to have that in your neutral file. Truth will become truth and you will know it. Falsehood will compost, it becomes worm castings. It's good. And I like the way you put that things are sales pitches, because GSM, you can say it's a sales pitch. Global warming, sales pitch. Republicans, sales pitch. The Green New Deal, sales pitch. Democrats, liberals, sales pitch. Politics at all. A hierarchical structure of control, sales pitch. All of it. And there's people who are pitching these sales pitches saying, hey, buy our nonsense. And you really don't have to, and I think that's something that is very important, and I think it comes across in your channel. So, keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, today, we've been talking to Michael Lazaro, Evolutionary Energy Arts on YouTube. You should follow. It should be part of your evening news, with the family. And, keep up the great work. And any last thoughts?
Just what we said. We have to realize that, this is most definitely a roller coaster ride, and we've talked about that. But the more of us that can pull together and recognize the disharmony that's been promoted, and then band together and start to form that beautiful, perfect vision, and let go of all of our differences, then, we could really transition out of this period quickly and easily, compared to if we just let them divide us and keep us divided. So we need to let go of that which does not serve us and be willing to accept the new information, just like you were talking about the neutral file. That's a good analogy, most definitely. And that really is, a lot of times it's really a case of letting go of the ego, and saying, you know what, I believed this before, but you know what, maybe I was a little bit off. Maybe it's not exactly that. You could even say, maybe I was wrong, and now I've learned and grown.
Oh, so definitely. Really, yeah, and it's really just an aspect of spiritual, intellectual maturity, is to realize that we're wrong, and who even cares? I mean, if you haven't been completely wrong about something in life, then you have not been very intellectually curious. I mean, and don't worry about it. You get used to it. Oh man, I was totally wrong. Oh well, whatever.
Exactly.
All right. Well, great talking to you today. And when we get the show up, I will send you a link to it. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been great.
It was a lot of fun, Craig. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Radiant Creators. Check out more content at radiantcreators.com. If you like the show, give it a like. Share this. Comment. Keep the conversation going. You can also find us at alternatecurrentradio.com, where there's this show and a lot more.